James Park stood in his corner office overlooking the city skyline, holding the elegant wedding invitation that had arrived that morning. His son Michael was getting married in 3 weeks to Emma Chen, a young woman James had met only twice during brief formal dinners that had left him with more questions than answers. At 62, James had built Park Technologies from a small startup into a billion-dollar empire, but his success had come at a cost. His wife had left him years ago, taking their daughter with her, claiming that his obsession with work had made him cold and distant. Michael was the only family and James was determined not to lose him to someone who might be interested only in the Park family fortune. Emma seemed pleasant enough during their, but James had learned through bitter experience people often showed their best faces to wealthy. She was beautiful, well-educated, and said all the right things, but something about her perfect responses made James suspicious. He had encountered too many people over the years who had seen him as a source of wealth rather than a human being. Michael was clearly infatuated with Emma, speaking about her with the kind of blind devotion that worried James. His son had grown up wealthy and privileged, perhaps making him naive about people's true motivations. James had tried to express his concerns, but Michael had dismissed them as paranoia born from too many years in the cutthroat business world. The wedding was being held at the Grand Ballroom, one of the city's most exclusive venues, with a guest list that read like a who's who of society and business leaders. James had offered to pay for everything, and Emma had accepted graciously, but he wondered if her gratitude was genuine or calculated. As James looked at the invitation, an idea began to form in his mind. He wanted to see the real Emma Chen, not the polished version she presented to potential family members. He needed to observe her when she thought no one important was watching, when she believed her actions wouldn't be scrutinized or reported back to the Park family. Chapter 2. The Plan. James called his longtime friend and business partner David Kim, who had started as a waiter in his father's restaurant before building his own hospitality empire. David now owned the catering company that would be serving Michael's wedding, making him the perfect ally for James's unconventional plan. "You want to do what?" David asked, his voice filled with disbelief as James explained his idea over lunch at their usual restaurant. "I want to work as a waiter at Michael's wedding," James repeated calmly. "I need to see how Emma treats service staff when she thinks no one from my family is watching." David shook his head, clearly thinking his friend had lost his mind. "James, you're one of the most recognizable businessmen in the city. Someone will recognize you immediately. Not if I'm dressed as a waiter and keeping a low profile," James. "Most people don't really look at service staff. They see the uniform, not the person wearing it." James had given this considerable thought. He would wear glasses instead of his usual contacts, style his hair different, and adopt the deferential posture of someone accustomed to serving others. Having grown up poor before building his fortune, James remembered how to blend into the background when necessary. "This is incredibly risky, David. If Emma or Michael discovers what you're doing, it could destroy your relationship with your son forever. If Emma is the wrong person for Michael, I need to know before it's too late," James said firmly. "I've seen too many marriages destroyed by people who married for money rather than love." David sighed, recognizing the determined expression that had made James successful in business. "What exactly are you hoping to learn?" "I want to see if she treats waiters with respect or dismisses them as invisible. I want to know if she's kind when she thinks it doesn't matter, or if her politeness is just an act for people she thinks are important." After much persuasion, David agreed to help, though he insisted on strict conditions. James would work only during the cocktail hour and dinner service, staying away from the head table where he might be recognized by family members. He would observe Emma's interactions with staff, but avoid direct contact that might expose his identity. Chapter 3. The Disguise. The morning of the wedding, James stood in front of his bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing the man looking back at him. He had traded his usual expensive suits for a simple black waiter's uniform, complete with a white shirt and black bow tie. Wire-rimmed glasses replaced his contacts, and he had styled his hair with gel to create a different look entirely. James practiced adopting the posture and mannerisms of someone accustomed to serving others. Slightly hunched shoulders, eyes that looked down more than up, and the quick, efficient movements of professional service staff. Having grown up in a working-class family before his business success, these behaviors came back to him more easily than he had expected. His driver, who had worked for the Park family for 15 years, barely recognized him when James emerged from his penthouse apartment. "Sir, are you certain about this plan? Young Master Michael will be devastated if he discovers what you're doing." "Michael will never know unless something goes wrong," James replied, though he felt a pang of guilt about deceiving his son on what should be the happiest day of his life. James arrived at the Grand Ballroom 3 hours before the ceremony, entering through the service entrance where David's catering staff were preparing for the evening. The kitchen was a symphony of controlled chaos, with dozens of workers preparing elaborate dishes for the 300 expected guests. David introduced James to the catering manager as Jim, a temporary worker filling in for a sick employee. The manager barely glanced at him, more concerned with ensuring that every detail of the high-profile event went smoothly. James spent the morning learning the layout of the ballroom, memorizing table numbers, and familiarizing himself with the evening's service schedule. He would be responsible for serving champagne during the cocktail hour and assisting with dinner service, giving him multiple opportunities to observe Emma's behavior. As guests began arriving for the ceremony, James felt his heart rate increase. He was about to see a side of his future daughter-in-law that she had never intended to show him, and he wasn't sure he was prepared for what he might discover. Chapter 4. The Wedding Ceremony. James watched from the service area as guests filled the beautifully decorated ballroom for the ceremony. The venue was stunning, with white roses and crystal accents creating an atmosphere of elegant romance. He felt a complex mixture of pride and anxiety as he saw his son standing at the altar, handsome in his custom tuxedo and radiating happiness. When Emma appeared at the back of the aisle, James had to admit she looked breathtaking. Her wedding dress was elegant but not ostentatious, and she carried herself with natural grace as she walked toward Michael. The love in her eyes as she looked at his son seemed genuine, but James reminded himself that he had seen skilled performers before. The ceremony was beautiful and heartfelt, with vows that brought tears to many guests' eyes. James found himself moved despite his skepticism, remembering his own wedding day decades earlier and the hopes he had harbored for a lifetime of happiness. He pushed aside his emotions, focusing on the task ahead. As the ceremony concluded and guests moved to the cocktail area, James took his position with the other server. He carried a tray of champagne glasses, moving through the crowd with the practiced invisibility that came with wearing a service uniform. James observed Emma from a distance as she greeted guests with Michael by her side. She seemed genuinely happy, laughing at stories and embracing friends and family members with apparent warmth. But James knew that public behavior at one's own wedding was hardly a reliable indicator of true character. The real test would come during the reception, when Emma was relaxed and focused on enjoying her celebration, rather than making good impressions. James positioned himself strategically, where he could observe her interactions with the catering staff, ready to see whether his suspicions about her character were justified. As servers began directing guests toward their tables for dinner, James felt his pulse quicken. The moment of truth was approaching, and he would soon discover whether his son had chosen wisely or fallen victim to someone who saw him as a path to wealth and status. Chapter 5. The First Test. As the cocktail hour progressed, James moved through the crowd with his champagne tray, observing Emma's interactions while maintaining his cover as an anonymous server. Most guests barely acknowledged his presence, treating him as part of the background scenery, which was exactly what he had expected and hoped for. Emma was radiant as she mingled with guests, her arm linked with Michael's as they moved from group to group. James watched her carefully, looking for any signs of the entitled behavior he had witnessed from other wealthy young women who treated service staff as invisible or inferior. The first real test came when a young server accidentally bumped into Emma while carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres, causing her to spill a small amount of champagne on her dress. James tensed, expecting to see Emma's true colors emerge in a moment of frustration. Instead, Emma immediately reached out to steady the nervous server, a young woman who looked terrified at having made such a mistake at such an important event. "Are you okay?" Emma asked with genuine concern, completely ignoring the stain on her own dress. "I'm so sorry, Miss Chen," the server stammered, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'll get something to clean your dress right away." "Please don't worry about it," Emma replied gently. "It's barely noticeable and these things happen. Are you hurt? You looked like you might have twisted your ankle when you bumped into me." James watched in surprise as Emma continued to focus on the server's well-being rather than her own inconvenience. The young woman's relief was visible as Emma's kindness replaced her expected anger with genuine care. "Thank you for being so understanding," the server said, clearly moved by Emma's response. "Of course," Emma smiled. "We're all working together to make this a beautiful evening. Thank you for everything you're doing to help make our wedding special." As Emma moved on to greet other guests, James found himself reconsidering his assumptions. The interaction had seemed completely natural and unforced, suggesting that Emma's kindness might be genuine rather than calculated. But he reminded himself that one incident wasn't enough to judge someone's true character. Chapter 6. Deeper Observations. As dinner service began, James found himself assigned to tables near the head table, giving him an excellent vantage point to observe Emma throughout the meal. He watched as she interacted with servers who came to refill water glasses, clear plates, and serve each course of the elaborate dinner. What struck James most was how Emma made eye contact with each server, thanking them personally for their service. She asked one older server about his family when she noticed a small photo tucked into his uniform pocket, and she complimented another on the beautiful presentation of the dessert course. During the salad course, James witnessed another telling moment. A server accidentally dropped a fork while clearing Emma's place setting, and it clattered loudly to the floor, drawing attention from nearby tables. Instead of showing embarrassment or irritation, Emma immediately bent down to help retrieve the fork, despite wearing an elaborate wedding dress. "Please don't worry about it," she told the flustered server. "I drop things all the time. Thank you for taking such good care of everyone tonight." James noticed that Emma's behavior was consistent throughout the evening. She wasn't putting on a show for specific moments. Her kindness appeared to be an integral part of her character. She treated every member of the service staff with the same respect and warmth she showed to the prominent guests at her wedding. During a brief lull in service, James overheard Emma talking to Michael about the catering staff. "Everyone working tonight has been so wonderful," she said. "I hope we can find a way to thank them properly. They're working so hard to make our day perfect." Michael smiled at his wife's comment, clearly accustomed to her thoughtfulness. "We can arrange for bonuses for the entire staff," he suggested. "That's a wonderful idea," Emma replied. "And maybe we could write personal thank you notes to the team leaders. I know how much it means when employers take time to acknowledge good work." James felt a growing sense of admiration for her, mixed with guilt about his deceptive plan. Her consideration for others seemed genuine and deeply ingrained, not the calculated behavior of someone trying to make a good impression. Chapter 7. The Revelation. As the evening progressed, James found himself in an unexpected situation. While refilling water glasses at a table near the dance floor, he accidentally caught his foot on a chair leg and stumbled, nearly dropping his water pitcher. Emma, who was passing by after dancing with Michael, immediately rushed to help him. "Are you all right?" she asked, reaching out to steady him with genuine concern. That looked like it could have been a nasty fall. James found himself face to face with his daughter-in-law, close enough to see the authentic worry in her eyes. For a moment, he feared she might recognize him despite his disguise, but Emma was focused entirely on his well-being rather than his identity. "I'm fine, thank you," James replied, keeping his voice lower than usual and avoiding direct eye contact. "Just clumsy. These floors can be slippery with all the dancing," Emma said sympathetically. "Are you sure you're not hurt? We could have someone check your ankle if you twisted it." The irony wasn't lost on James. Here was his daughter-in-law showing more concern for his welfare than many of his business associates had ever displayed. She was treating a clumsy waiter with the same care she would show to an injured family member. "Really, I'm perfectly fine," James assured her. "Thank you for your kindness." Emma smiled warmly. "Thank you for all your hard work tonight. I know how much effort goes into making an event like this successful, and I want you to know how much we appreciate everything you and your colleagues are doing." As Emma returned to her guests, James stood holding his water pitcher, profoundly moved by This wasn't the behavior of someone putting on an act for appearances. Emma had shown genuine compassion for someone she believed was a complete stranger, someone whose opinion couldn't possibly benefit her. James realized that his test had backfired in the most wonderful way possible. Instead of exposing Emma as a gold digger or social clown, he had discovered that his son had chosen a woman of exceptional character and genuine. Chapter 8. The Decision. As the reception continued, James found himself watching Emma with new eyes. Every interaction he observed reinforced his growing conviction that she was exactly the kind of person he had hoped his son would find. Someone who valued character over status, kindness over wealth. He watched as Emma took time to speak personally with elderly relatives, helped a guest's young child who had spilled juice on his shirt, and made sure that a guest using a wheelchair had everything she needed throughout the evening. Her behavior was consistently thoughtful and genuine, never performative or calculated. James began to feel ashamed of his elaborate deception. Emma had passed his test with flying colors, proving herself to be a woman of integrity and compassion. Meanwhile, he had spent his son's wedding day lurking in disguise, spying on his new daughter-in-law like some kind of private investigator. The guilt intensified when James overheard Emma talking to her maid of honor about her hopes for building a relationship with Michael's father. "I know Mr. Park has reservations about me," Emma said quietly. "I can tell he's not sure I'm right for Michael. I just hope that over time, I can prove to him that I love his son for who he is, not what he has." The sincerity in Emma's voice cut through James like a knife. Here was a young woman who genuinely cared about earning his approval and building a family relationship, while he was secretly testing her character through deception. James made a decision that surprised even him. He couldn't continue this charade any longer. Emma deserved honesty, and he deserved the chance to apologize for his suspicions and welcome her properly to the family. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, James approached David in the kitchen. "I need to end this," he said quietly. "Emma has proven herself beyond any doubt, and I can't keep deceiving her and Michael." David looked relieved. "I've been watching her too, and she's been nothing but gracious to everyone. You chose the right time to reveal yourself. She's going to make a wonderful daughter-in-law." James nodded, knowing that the hardest part was yet to come. He had to find a way to reveal his identity and explain his deception without destroying the trust he hoped to build with Emma. Chapter 9. The Confession. As the last guests departed and the cleanup began, James saw his opportunity. Emma was sitting alone at the head table, having kicked off her shoes and looking beautifully tired after her long day. Michael was saying goodbye to some college friends in the lobby, giving James a few precious minutes to approach his daughter-in-law. James walked over with a final glass of champagne, his heart pounding as he prepared to reveal his identity. Emma looked up with the same warm smile she had shown him all evening, completely unaware that she was about to discover the truth about the helpful waiter who'd been serving her. "One last champagne for the beautiful bride?" James offered, his voice slightly shaky with nervousness. "That's very thoughtful, thank you," Emma replied, accepting the glass. "You've been wonderful all evening. I hope you know how much your hard work has meant to making our day perfect." James took a deep breath, knowing there was no turning back. "Emma, I need to tell you something. I'm not actually a waiter." Emma looked confused, studying his face more carefully. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" James slowly removed his glasses and straightened his posture, allowing his natural bearing to emerge from beneath the servant's disguise. "I'm James Park, Michael's father." The champagne glass slipped from Emma's hand, shattering on the floor as recognition dawned in her eyes. Her expression cycled through shock, confusion, and what James feared might be anger or hurt. You've been watching me all night?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," James admitted, feeling the full weight of his deception. "I wanted to see how you treated people when you thought no one important was watching. I needed to know if your kindness was genuine or just an act for the family." Emma stared at him for a long moment, and James braced himself for the anger he was certain would come. Instead, her expression softened into something that looked like understanding. "You were protecting your son," she said quietly. "You wanted to make sure I loved him for the right reason." James nodded, amazed by her perceptive response. "I've seen too many people try to use Michael for his wealth. I had to know what kind of person you..." Chapter 10. Understanding and Forgiveness. Emma was quiet for several moments, processing the revelation that her father-in-law had spent their wedding day disguised as a waiter. James waited anxiously for her response, knowing that his deception could have permanently damaged their relationship before it had even begun. "I understand why you did it," Emma said finally, her voice thoughtful rather than angry. "If I had a son, I would want to protect him too. And I suppose there's no better way to judge someone's character than to see how they treat people they think can't help them." James felt a wave of relief at her measured response, but he knew he still owed her a complete explanation and apology. "Emma, I'm deeply sorry for deceiving you on your wedding day. You deserved honesty from me, and instead I chose suspicion and trickery." Emma stood up from her chair, and for a moment James thought she might walk away. Instead, she stepped closer to him, her expression serious but not hostile. "Mr. Park, can I ask you something?" she said. "What did you learn about me?" James looked into her eyes, seeing the same genuine warmth that had characterized all her interactions with the service staff. "I learned that you're exactly the kind of person I hoped my son would. You're compassionate and genuine. You treat everyone with respect regardless of their position or status." Emma smiled slightly. "And I learned something about you too. You're a father who loves his son enough to spend his evening in disguise, serving champagne and watching from the sidelines, just to make sure he's chosen well." The insight in her words struck James deeply. He had been so focused on testing Emma that he hadn't considered what his actions revealed about his own character and motivations. "I also learned," Emma, "that you remember what it's like to work hard for a living. Most wealthy people couldn't have pulled off that disguise so convincingly. You understood how to move like someone who serves others because you've been there yourself." James nodded, impressed by her perceptiveness. "I grew up poor. I worked as a busboy and waiter to pay for college. I've never forgotten what that felt like." "That's why this test mattered so much to you," Emma said with growing understanding. "You wanted to make sure I wouldn't look down on people the way some wealthy people might have looked down on you." Chapter 11. A New Beginning. Michael appeared in the doorway of the ballroom, looking confused as he saw his father and new wife standing together in what appeared to be an intense conversation. James and Emma both turned toward him, and James realized he would have to explain his deception to his son as well. "Dad, what are you doing here? I thought you left an hour ago," Michael said, walking toward them with a puzzled expression. Emma looked at James, silently asking if he wanted to explain or if she should. James appreciated her discretion and stepped forward to face his son. "Michael, I owe both you and Emma an apology. I've been here all evening, working as a waiter to observe how Emma treated the service staff." Michael's expression shifted from confusion to shock to what looked like the beginning of anger. "You did what? Dad? How could you spy on Emma at our wedding?" "I wanted to know her true character," James said, knowing how inadequate the explanation sounded. "I needed to see if she was marrying you for love or for money." Michael's face flushed with anger. "That's incredibly insulting to both of us." Emma has never shown any interest in our family's wealth. She insisted on paying for half the wedding herself, even though she makes a fraction of what we. Emma placed a gentle hand on Michael's arm. It's okay, she said quietly. Your father was protecting you the only way he knew how. And honestly, I'm glad he did it. Both men stared at her in surprise. You're glad? Michael asked. Yes, Emma replied, looking directly at James. Because now your father knows without any doubt that I love you for who you are, not what you have. And I know that he's the kind of father who would go to extraordinary lengths to protect his son's happiness. James felt his eyes fill with tears at Emma's gracious response. Emma, you're more generous than I deserve. I hope you can forgive an old man's paranoia and give me a chance to be the father-in-law you deserve. Emma stepped forward and, to James's amazement, embraced him warmly. Welcome to the family, Dad, she said softly. I hope we can build the kind of relationship where you never feel the need to test me again. Michael looked back and forth between his father and wife, his anger gradually giving way to understanding. I can't believe you two worked this out so quickly. I was ready to be furious with both of you. Chapter 12. The Family Bond. 6 months later, James sat in his office looking at a framed photo from Michael and Emma's wedding. It wasn't one of the formal portraits, but a candid shot that David had taken during the reception. Emma helping the young server who had spilled champagne, her face showing genuine concern and kindness. The photo served as a daily reminder of the lesson Emma had taught him about judging character and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. More importantly, it reminded him of the daughter-in-law he had almost missed getting to know because of his own suspicions. Emma had become a regular presence in James's life, stopping by his office for lunch, calling to check on his health, and including him in weekend plans with Michael. She had never again mentioned his wedding day deception, instead focusing on building the family relationship she had always wanted. James had also learned more about Emma's background, discovering that she had grown up in a working-class family and had put herself through college while working multiple jobs. Her respect for service workers wasn't an act. It came from having been one herself and understanding the dignity of honest work. The relationship between James and Emma had grown stronger than he had ever expected. She sought his advice on career decisions, shared her dreams of starting a nonprofit organization, and treated him with the kind of genuine affection he had thought he might never experience again. Michael often joked that his father and wife had become so close that he sometimes felt like the third wheel in their relationship. But James could see how happy it made his son to watch his father and wife building a genuine bond based on mutual respect and affection. On this particular afternoon, Emma knocked on James's office door, carrying takeout from the Korean restaurant where she and Michael had had their first date. Lunch? She offered with a smile. As they sat together eating and talking about Emma's plans for her nonprofit, James reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that night at the wedding. His test had revealed Emma's true character, but it had also revealed something about himself, his capacity to love and trust again, and his ability to welcome new family with an open heart. Thank you, James said suddenly, interrupting Emma's description of her latest project. For lunch? Emma asked, looking confused. For forgiving me, James replied. For seeing past my deception to the love behind it. For giving me a daughter when I thought I had lost that chance forever. Emma reached across the desk and squeezed his hand. Thank you for caring enough about Michael to make sure he chose well, and thank you for giving me the chance to prove that your son's happiness means everything. As they continued their lunch, James knew that his unconventional test had led to the most precious gift of all, a family bond built on understanding, forgiveness, and genuine love.